They go, Megan Anderson just got married so she could become a legal citizen, and then they tagged Customs.
I didn't see that. No, I didn't see that.
That's not Cyborg doing that. That's Ray.
Man.
Again, they take a lot of swings. That's fine. And again, if you tweet more than 5 times a day, you have an issue. I mean, you're too much. It's too much, man. You got to back off. My issue is now when you talk that shit about Megan Anderson and then you tag the U.S. Border Controller, the Customs, and you try and fuck him over, you're not gaining any fans doing that. And I'm positive that's not Cyborg doing that. That's Ray, and that's a bit of an issue.
Generation, are you excited about it all?
What up, everybody, and welcome back to yet another Sound of Violence podcast. This is actually going to be a really weird one. I am Pulver, and normally I'm here with my co-host, Cris Madaffer. However, my co-host, Cris Madaffer, we had some scheduling issues this week, so unfortunately we're not in the studio at the same time. However, I did get him to tape his picks, which I will be putting in here shortly. If you guys don't know, Cris will break it down in a second, but we are an MMA podcast that covers MMA podcasts, basically trying to let you know each week which MMA podcast you should be listening to and which ones aren't worth your time. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it right to Cris, let him give his picks, and then I will be back here in a second with my picks, and then we'll talk about that fucking intro from Theo Vaughn, which is hilarious as well. So we will throw to Cris, and then we will be right back where I will talk a bit about his picks and comment on mine as well. So check this shit out.
Alright, we are recording right now. I probably should take one earphone out of my ear. Anyways, here we go. What's going on, everyone? It's me, Cris. I just want to say sorry to the listeners that I couldn't make it to this week's podcast, but here I am doing my best attempt right now to go ahead and get the ball rolling so Pulver can transition into his stuff. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start off with our usual segment, the whole podcast you should catch this week, podcast you should skip. And remember, when we say podcast you should skip, it doesn't mean that's because, it's generally a podcast that you shouldn't listen to. It just means that this week they really weren't, we weren't feeling it. So, and then last but not least, if I can actually talk, I'm going to go ahead and mention and give a shout out to the podcast that you absolutely cannot miss this week. So without further ado, my podcast that you should catch is the Luke Thomas's Monday Morning Analyst. Luke actually recorded, I believe, the night of UFC 220 last Saturday. And he basically went over... Oh, and first of all, he actually corrects his Francis Ngannou pronunciation. For those who listened to before, Luke kept calling him Ngannou, and I know he does that to... He says a couple other names like Amanda Nunes, but, some people like to fuck with listeners. Who knows? Maybe they just pronounce it the way however they want. Either way, it doesn't matter. He went off and just started talking about how skills win fights. He was saying this is kind of how Stipe just basically was able to get the better of Francis Ngannou for 25 minutes. And it is basically, as he kind of just goes on and discusses how brilliant Stipe was in his performance with his level changes and basically having Ngannou just miss with those heavy bombs that he was trying to throw at Stipe in round one, which eventually led him to gas after, I'd say, a round and a half. Luke was basically saying who's next for Stipe realistically and stylistically, and the name that kept coming up, especially from some of the people that emailed him, was Cain Velasquez. We know Cain Velasquez, the former heavyweight champ, some who consider one of the best heavyweights of all time, is currently in training, or back in the gym, I should say. Doesn't mean he's ready to fight by any means, unfortunately, because he's battled injuries, but I think Cain Velasquez versus Stipe would be an excellent fight, and I would actually be willing to wait, I think, almost till the near fall, if that fight were to come to fruition. Then again, if they didn't give Kane someone like Stipe, not sure who else they can give him. Maybe a Verdum. Would it be just a rematch? I think they've only fought once. I think that'd be kind of neat. He talked about the co-main event. He said Volkan Oezdemir is a great fighter early, but unfortunately, at his own demise, his I don't want to say inability to counter wrestle, but his lack of wrestling prowess and knowledge kind of led to him just basically having DC just take the upper hand and be on cruise control, really, for the rest of the fight, which led to Daniel Cormier putting in another great performance and showing why he's the best 205-pounder in the world. He discussed briefly Bellator 192, said for the most part, it was kind of staggering trying to watch that at the same time, juxtaposed next to the UFC card. I understand that. Me and Pulver, we tried to watch at the same time, and luckily Pulver had it on his phone, so we were able to watch great couple knockouts. Shout out to Aaron Pico with that liver shot with the uppercut. Jesus Christ, that was nasty. That was fun watching. He discussed the co-main event, which, really should have been the main event. Rory McDonald's very impressive victory over former Bellator welterweight champ Douglas Lima. The only thing, as Luke was discussing, is McDonald's body doesn't seem to respond well to damage, meaning that his body's hurt easily, and I noticed that as well. He had that really large, nasty-looking hematoma on his left leg, on his shin. But the fact that he's tough and resilient and has a skill set is basically what got him to grind out a gutsy performance and win. He thought Lima could have done better, and he said, but Roy looked like a starving person who's looking for food. So that's my catch this. I would say after that, my can't miss would have to be co-main. Or actually, I can't say can't miss yet. I don't have Pulver here, guys. I'm already out of the fucking loop. Excuse me, my skip is I shouldn't say definitely. See, now I sound like a dick. I'd say my skip, it was a solid podcast for sure, but I'd say Anik and Florian just because I didn't listen to that many other podcasts. They spent the first 10 minutes talking about NFL because, as you may or may not know, John, Anik, and Kenny Florian are both from Boston, so they're gushing over the Patriots win, blah, 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 that thing. They discussed the main event. They said they thought Francis Ngannou perhaps wasn't even ready to fight Stipe. They mentioned how he spent 2.5 weeks training in Paris when perhaps he may have just probably should have stayed in Vegas at the UFC Performance Institute instead and really just focused his training down there locally. They kept talking about how Daniel Cormier is such a special person and what he does for not only his own family and his children, but for his children's wrestling teams. He pays registration fees for other kids so they can afford to wrestle and be on the team. And yeah, man, I'm a huge Daniel Cormier fan. I think he's a great guy, and it's awesome to have him as the 205 champ. And they were discussing who's next for Daniel Cormier, and Alexander Gustafsson was up there, and I mean, I would agree 100%. Get Gus in there, but I feel like Gus's health is kind of up in the air right now. I know he was dealing, I think, with concussions. I think he had some back or knee problems. I can't really remember, but they talked about Volkan, the fact that Oezdemir had a title shot in less than a year, which you never really hear about. That's pretty insane. They said he'll be back. He just needs to work on some wrestling fundamentals, and they were kind of discussing who maybe Volkan should fight next in such a shallow division currently. They had Calvin Cater. I think it's Calvin Cater. He's a Boston native, Boston local. He was on the phone discussing his 10-week camp. His training partner, Rob Font, had an impressive victory over Thomas Almeida. Both of them did. Calvin Cater finishing the formerly undefeated Shane Burgos. Ray Longo called in part of their segment, the Ray Longo Minute. He didn't really, I don't want to say he didn't he did criticize Francis Ngannou. He was basically just think Ngannou overestimated his own ability, and he said they hyped him on videos showing him using a breathing mask on a treadmill. But what was ironic about that is he was done after one round. Ray Longo even went as far as to say if Francis Ngannou was a 170-pounder or below, he wouldn't even be in the UFC. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it's a little unfair, but I definitely see where he's coming from. Because as far as his athleticism and his punching power, how that kind of gets him through his opponents. They asked him about Matt Frivola's game plan, how that didn't work, unfortunately. He said they're going to go back to the drawing board, so next time he's more intelligent. And then I'm going to say my can't miss is co-main event. I'll breeze through this a little bit. They talked about Big John McCarthy's commentator debut at Bellator 192. They then asked, who's the real UFC lightweight champ? A caller actually even said, who's the real UFC lightweight champ? I have a friend who's very confused, and his name is Dana White. And I said, wow, that's very accurate, and that's a savage remark, if I must say so myself. Dana alluded to Tony and Khabib fighting for the real belt, yet he actually didn't say outright Conor is stripped. So who fucking knows? What's the next big pay-per-view? They kept pointing to Moscow in September, but if Khabib does beat Tony, you'd assume he's going to fight in Moscow in September there. And whether it's against McGregor, which makes sense money-wise, or someone else, that should be very interesting. They went on to say Francis Ngannou could still pursue his love of boxing under the Zuffa boxing label, perhaps. They said, is there an issue with Stipe and Dana? They'll have to find a way to work together over either way, because Stipe's still the champ. They said they kind of echoed the same sentiment Luke Thomas was saying. How does Rory always manage to always be crippled pretty much after every fight he's in? He literally had to be carried out of the ring. I think it's by some of his coaches. They gave props to Douglas Lima. They just briefly discussed the Chael versus Rampage fight and saying this is one of the better versions of Chael we've seen in a long time. So that's all I have for my podcast recommendations. Let's go ahead.
Alright, I am back now that Cris has broken down the formula for the show. And actually, you know what? Let me turn this mic down just a touch since we're in a little bit different setup this week. Let's go like there. Hopefully that's not too... that's a little quiet. Let me get in just bladoosh. Gadoosh, as Brendan Schaub would say. Apologies ahead of time if you hate ice cube noises, because I am drinking scotch and water. I'm almost done with it, though, and I'll switch to a beer, but it's definitely helping this week. If you guys have not noticed, we do have a Fear and Loathing theme this week, because the reason why we're not recording on time is I am actually heading to Las Vegas on Friday. So our recording schedule got all fucked up, plus Cris had shit he had to do, so... anyway, I'll comment quickly on some of the podcasts Cris mentioned. Monday Morning Analyst with Luke Thomas was fantastic. He broke down how not solid Ngannou was at stopping any of those takedowns, like how he showed like moments like he almost knew what he was doing, and then it was just a lot of running backwards while getting tackled by Stipe. Yeah, just a good... it's Luke Thomas doing Luke Thomas things, and I recommend it. I also recommend his results show. If you check that out, it was pretty funny that he did for UFC and Bellator, where he's drinking a Jim Beam and Coke Zero, as he's wont to do. So I will get into my catch. My catch this week, I actually have a couple of, because I wanted to kind of make it up to y'all, since we are, it is going to be a short episode, but I figured I'd run through some stuff. One of my catches was actually Chris's can't miss, so I will hold off on that for now. But I did have Heavy Hands, episode 195, just a really solid Heavy Hands episode. Conor opened making some jokes that they're there to suffer for their sins and coax themselves back into Stipe's favor, because they had both picked against Stipe and felt real dumb about it this week, which I feel like a lot of people probably are. And then they break down exactly what they got wrong in the Stipe analysis, which was a lot of like, man, I kind of bought the hype, and the punching power kind of sold me, which I feel like a lot of people ran into this week. Conor also joked that only the Patreon listeners are allowed to drag him behind their trucks because of their poor picks last week, which I thought was a funny nod. And then from there, they just talk a lot about Stipe's adaptability, which is what's making him so dominant in that division, where he's able to adapt to different styles pretty seamlessly because of his wrestling base and solid striking. And they also talk what's next for Stipe, whether it's going to be DC or Kane or what. They talk DC versus Vulcan. They also talk about how good and comfortable DC is becoming as a pressure fighter since the first Jones fight, which I thought was a really good, a really interesting point, because you've definitely seen a change in DC. I'm going to set this drink down so I quit clanking it, irritating the great Doug Stanhope. Not that he's listening, but I know that's a fucking pet peeve. Anyway, they break that down really solid. They also talk about what's next for DC, and when he retires, whether we're looking at a Vulcan versus Glover versus Gustafsson type situation for the title, which is kind of sad for 205, especially when you look past those three in that division. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on. And they talk about Shane Burgos versus Calvin Kattar, which they both fucking loved, and they were super high on Calvin Kattar's performance and his coachability during the fight. Taka Almeida's chin is probably going to keep him out of the top 5. Oh, they also mentioned that Burgos is only 5 years in, which I didn't realize, which is pretty crazy. They even mentioned, like, yo, look at him in comparison to Ngannou, and just the fucking skill difference between the two, despite the size difference, is kind of remarkable. After that, they just talk a bit about how there's constantly motorcycles around, evidently. And they also talk about Rory versus Lima and Rory's return to wrestling in his recent fights, which I feel like has made a big difference. They also talk Aaron Pico's insane fucking performance with that body hook, which I will mention later. And they break down the Jacare versus Brunson II card. Oh, also Connor says Vellante versus Bahos obviously gets fight of the night, which is hilarious. And no, sir, they don't. So that was my catch. My other catch for this week totally caught me off guard, and you will hear a clip of this coming up shortly. Probably after this next... Yeah, you'll hear a clip of this after this next break, which is Big Brown Breakdown 63. Actually, you know what? This is what you heard on the intro. I lied earlier. I'm using this as the intro. Big Brown Breakdown, episode 63 with Cris Cyborg. First off, Brendan's stealing Mark Maron's bit where he just like, oh, fuckos, all fuckerinos, or whatever the fuck bit Maron did 10 years ago on his podcast. Brendan started randomly doing that over the last couple. Just driving me goddamn nuts because I know he's never heard Maron's podcast. Which just makes it worse. Or if he has, that's double worse. But I assume he has no time for anything other than Brendan Schaub. He opens talking a lot about the Boston show at the Wilbur and how he can't stop puking all the time, which is fucking, what the fuck, bro. And then, it's just a lot of Brendan blowing Boston, and talks about 220 for a while. He does say at one point, obviously, I was on the Francis Dick Rider train, which I thought was hilarious. And then he proceeds to shit on Francis Ngannou for probably the next 30 minutes. On just like how he heard he didn't do shit training wise, and how everyone was obviously lying to him about wrestling with the French national team, or the French national team for the Olympics, and like just went ham. At one point he said Herschel Walker at 50 had better wrestling and cardio than Francis does. Just went so hard against him. Oh man, I was surprised to see him turn a corner that hard, although I shouldn't be, because the fucking the Connor money fight thing is something Brendan turned a sharp corner on out of nowhere. Let's see. Brendan also runs down Stipe's record and why he thinks he's the best heavyweight. And then he talks about which you heard in the intro. Well, we'll get to the part you heard in the intro. We're almost there. Brendan talks about Cyborg's fake announcement for the Amanda fight. On Twitter and everything, where she's like, oh, I've accepted the fight against Amanda, so now everyone should contact UFC. Actually, it's Ray Elby. I don't know why I'm doing a Brazilian accent. Dude's not from Brazil. And he's obviously the one writing all this, which Brendan Schaub brings up when they also mentioned the Megan Anderson tweet, where Ray Elby this week on Cyborg's Twitter literally tagged fucking the goddamn immigration Twitter account for the U.S. trying to get Megan kicked out of the country, which, what the fuck, bro. And our intro, as you heard, is Brendan Schaub shitting on Ray Elby for being a kind of a trash person, and just, what the fuck. Like, I've interacted with Ray a lot on the UG back in the day, and like, I don't even necessarily dislike Ray, like, personally or anything. He's always been like fairly nice to me overall, but holy shit, can I not stand the way he runs Cyborg's Twitter. It's fucking unbearable. And you know it's bad when Brendan Schaub is calling you out by name and saying it's not Cyborg, it's Ray Elby on the episode that they also have a pre-recorded interview with Cyborg and Ray Albion. It's goddamn ridiculous. It's fucking insane. You know shit is bad when Brendan Schaub is being this blatant about it, and he knows you personally. So I just wanted to shout this out because what the fuck, man. It just blows my goddamn mind. Ray Albie's allowed to do any of that. He's the worst person on Twitter. He's the worst. Like, if you ever dealt with him on forums or anything, it's very similar where he's just like, I'm going to spend 20 minutes throwing out really obscure facts about the amount of a draw a Cyborg is, where you do all these weird double qualifiers like the UFC does of like, this guy has the most takedowns in title defenses within the years 1990 to 2000 at this one weight class that only existed for 2 of those years, where you're like, what the fuck kind of stat is that? That's not a stat. That's just you doing weird math to try and look good. So it was a lot of that. Cris, however, did have some hilarious quotes. Yeah, sorry, I have so many notes about all the horrible shit Brennan said about Ray, which was hilarious. My favorite Cyborg quote during the interview with her and Ray was, she said Jason Perillo always tells her no Wanderlei style, which is fucking hilarious. That he has to constantly be like, don't fucking fight like Wanderlei. Don't do it. You can't fight like that. Don't do that. Especially in the lead up for the Holly fight. So I thought that was super funny. It's a lot of Ray interrupting while Cyborg's actually being kind of entertaining and like fun to listen to. Yeah, it was a fun episode. It could have almost been a skip, but the way Brendan Schaub went so fucking hard at Ray Albie in the intro, I am 100% on board. It needed to be done. No one calls him out by name. Everyone just calls him her boyfriend. Like, no one calls Ray Albie out by name. I think it's because dude is, like, willing to go confront people on the regular, but it's good to hear Brendan actually, like, be like, yo, this is terrible for Cyborg. Ray Albie needs to stop doing this. Because it's something everyone on the forums, any forum that's been around, has been saying for a while. So, that was my catch for this week. Chris's skip was Anik Florian 140, which I had so far down on the list of on my list of notes for podcasts I listened to that it was literally the last thing, and I wasn't even going to bring it up. So I totally understand why I had to skip. It was a very skippable episode. They opened talking about the DC and Stipe wins. Calvin Kattar calls in, super like fine interview. Calvin Kattar seems cool as hell. I didn't really have a problem with it. Just didn't really stand out. But he did talk a lot about like having his teammates Burgos and what's his face, dude that killed Almeida. I can't think of his name. We'll get to it later. But anyway, he talked about having his teammates win and then him getting the win, and in his hometown and everything. How cool that was. Ray Longo calls in and lights Ngannou's coach on fire, which was hilarious. He's just like, what the fuck? Like, how do you not... He clearly has never trained wrestling. What are you guys doing? How do you let him fight like that? And then Stan calls in and talks a bunch of NFL. It was alright, but like, it was not worth noting. And that show has so severely dropped off a cliff since it left for Fox. And here's something I'm real curious about and nervous for that show about. I called last year that show was going to be dead within a year or so. I think I said like a year and a half. Maybe I said a year. Either way, I believe it because I'm starting to be real convinced that the UFC isn't going to sign with Fox again. And if the UFC doesn't sign with Fox again, why the fuck would Fox Sports keep an MMA podcast with a host of the UFC when it goes to a different platform? That makes zero sense to me. And their deal is up at the end of 2018. So, like, I feel like there's kind of a ticking clock on that podcast that is, like, real upsetting and kind of disappointing, and I'll be very interested to see how that goes. Or maybe John Anik's giving us all a sign that the UFC is totally going to re-sign with Fox and we're all idiots. Totally possible. Don't buy it, but it's possible. So that was Chris's skip. My skip is the MMA Road Show 147.5. Mostly just because it's all press conference clips. John Morgan has some good like tags and like interstitial breaks that he does in between the press conference clips. But since Cold Coffee is still off sleeping and after his trip to Boston, and John wasn't even at the UFC card, he was at the Bellator card. It was just kind of, he recapped briefly the Bellator 192 card, talked a little bit of UFC 220, which he said he was watching on someone's phone or a laptop or something in the building during the Bellator fights at Press Row. So that was pretty funny. And then he talks a bit about Chael versus Rampage and some of the wins at Bellator. And then he just plays a bunch of press audio of press conferences, stuff like the Pico press conference with Stipe, DC's audio at the press conference, and Cold Coffee gives some quick thoughts on the card. I love that show. It's not like the only I would say this show is actually worth listening to if you just want like highlights of the press conferences. But if you've already seen the press conferences, you've heard like maybe 60% of this show, 70%. So yeah, that's why it's my skip. But I mean, it wasn't bad by any means. I still listened to the whole thing, and since I didn't listen to the press conferences, it was still solid. It was just a lot of that audio. Let's see, and then we'll get to Chris's podcast you can't miss this week, which was Co-Main Event, episode 290, which was really goddamn good. That was actually going to be one of my catches this week, so that works out well. Ben was sick this week. They opened talking about their Patreon, which they're now doing giveaways on, so if you want to drop them $5 a month, you can get in on Co-Main Event giveaways, where you might win some sweet Fulton and Rourke products or an extra large MMA shirt or something. They had some really good bits. They talked about price hikes for pay-per-views. Chad asked whether a $100 pay-per-view would be worth it for Nurmi versus Connor if there was also a spider lady and a sword and it was in Russia, which that was a real good one. That almost ended up as a clip this week. They talk about Big John and Bellator. And, there's a dude, Dalby Whitehouse, who wrote in, which threw fucking fire, saying he has a confused friend who doesn't know whether or not Connor is being stripped of the belt, and his confused friend is Dana White, which I thought was fucking fantastic, because that press conference Dana did was absolutely ridiculous. Oh my god. It was the most cringeworthy shit. Schaub actually had some funny points on that, too, which I was, again, surprised about, so I would recommend checking both of those out, but good God, Dana White, what are you doing, bro? Do a plan or write something down ahead of time. Jesus. The discourse, Stipe's win over Ngannou, and they keep calling Kane El Campeón del Mundo, which is my favorite shit of all time, and I forgot that used to be their bit. They talk DC and what's next for him besides Jones or Stipe. And they also mentioned DJ Johnny Bones rocking the clubs out in Ithaca if he hadn't become any MMA fighter. So, funny episode, and again, a good example of why that show is great, even without Sir Nigel. Although, let's be real, we all love us some Sir Nigel, because god damn it, is that motherfucker. That Christmas episode I still think about like once or twice a week. It's so good. All right, and then so for my can't misses, I actually have JRE MMA Show, Rogan's MMA Show, episode 12 with Ben Askren, and episode 13 with Thug Rose and Pat Barry. It's just fucking fantastic. Ben explains exactly how the UFC fucked him over in negotiations when he left Bellator, which he's talked about previously. If you guys have ever listened to his podcast that he had way back in the day, Lineup MMA, or the podcast that he had after that called Sean Funky and the Baddest Man. He also has a podcast called T-Row and Funky Show, which is all about wrestling. We've talked about it in the past, but I recommend checking it out. He does it with Tommy Rollins, who's a former super high-level wrestler, and been friends with Askren for a long time. But yeah, Askren's on, and they just talk about all the shit you think they would talk about, and that Ben's been saying he wants to talk with Joe about on Twitter for like a year or two now, probably longer, probably more like 5 years now, it feels like. A lot of like the crazy Dana bullshit, all the Bjorn stuff. He talked about how essentially UFC got him to drop his matching clause with or basically got released from his Bellator contract, then went to the UFC. The UFC then said, we're not interested in Ben Askren. He then went and talked to them. They said, okay, take a fight in WSOF and we'll sign you. And then they called him and then they told him later they're not interested in signing him. It's like, Jesus Christ, so fucked up. Yeah, it's just basically like a giant list of reasons why Dana's kind of an asshole. And then after that, they talk about the stuff, like I said, you would figure they'd talk about college athletes getting fucked over for money. Ben talks a bit about why he brings FRB to his fights. He also mentioned that he's working on striking, or when he moved to Rufus originally, he was working on striking 6 times a week. And that's why, like, his striking defense is really solid, because that's mostly what he focused on. Not necessarily his offense nearly as much as his defense. Which I thought was interesting, because, yeah, when he talked about also, and Rogan mentioned that Ben hasn't been hit, and wasn't hit in any of his 3 fights in 2017, which is crazy. So, pretty wild. And then they get into some weird conspiracy shit, because Ben always likes to hear that shit out. And, yeah, Vegas shootings, moon landings, 9/11, a lot of that stuff. After that, mostly just talk about wrestling and weight cutting. Ben at one point does say that he thinks a lot more people were on EPO than we think, and he throws Johnny Hendricks under the bus. Shocking. And then he also talks about Khabib versus Tony and how he sees it going, and how he's mostly happy to just do wrestling for high school and middle school kids nowadays. But yeah, just a great episode with Ben. Ben's great. If you guys haven't heard him before, highly recommend it. I'm sure you've heard this episode by the time you hear it, or by the time I'm saying this. And then JRE MMA Show number 13 with Thug, Rose, and Pat. Just fucking great. Rose was a goddamn quote machine during this, just being the most adorable person of all time, and just so sweet and nice. And Rose is kind of the goddamn best. Man, here's some quotes. I'm not a big fan of heels because I can't run away in them. She says she's wearing harem pants and wooden beads. Here's some more quotes. After the Miocic fight, they said they wanted to leave the city immediately. Man, there was some more Rose quotes in here somewhere, but I don't know where they are in my notes. They talk about JJ fucking with her pre-fight, saying weird shit like, do you believe him? Did you buy the ticket? And then just walking off, and everyone in their camp being like, what the fuck does that mean? It's the craziest shit ever. Yeah, just really cool episode. Rogan even at one point, which was actually going to be one of my clips. I don't know if it still is. My clips are all over the place this week, but I've rearranged them a couple times now. But Rogan at one point said, like, you Rose, you're the kind of person this sport needs right now, and I am totally on board with that. Rose is cool as hell. Talks about being into, like, making food from scratch and gardening and just being a cool motherfucker. So I highly recommend that, because Rose is cool as shit. Also, one thing I did not realize is, and I don't know why I didn't put this together, I know they're at the same camp, but Tisha trains and works out with Rose a lot, which I think is going to make the Andrade fight against Tisha really interesting, because Tisha, I think Andrade is probably the toughest style matchup for Rose right now. Because of her super, super strong grappling game and her, like, crazy pressure, I feel like that could be a problem, especially since Rose has been known to get stuck on bottom, or to get stuck, like, on the end of, like, I just feel like it'll be interesting to see how that style matchup works. Just because their styles are so different, and especially Andrade coming off that Gadelha win, which was so fucking dominant. It was terrifying. So I feel like this Tisha fight against Andrade is going to be really telling to see how a Rose-Andrade fight is going to go. Like, if Andrade blows through Tisha, that is going to say huge things for her chance against Rose. So that'll be interesting. And then, of course, Rose is fighting JJ in the meantime. So who knows how that shit's going to go. JJ dropped her old shitty nutritionist that fucked up her weight cut, evidently, where she dropped 15 pounds in 14 hours is what they said. Just like, all right, bro, it's not It's not advisable for a fucking 115 pounder. It's like a goddamn, like, 20th of their body weight almost. It's ridiculous. I guess it's like a 10th of their body weight. I'm bad at math on the fly. Anyway, those are my catches for this week. And then the new podcast I checked out, since this is a weird episode and a short one, I just checked out I wanted to check out a podcast that's only semi-MMA related, and I realized that Theo Vaughn has a podcast called This Past Weekend, which I didn't know about previously. I met the dude a couple times at the La Jolla Comedy Store. Super nice guy. Funny as hell. I think I met him with Teeb once or twice, Jason Tebow. And, yeah, it's super funny. So I listened to his podcast that he did on January 22nd. I believe it's This Past Weekend, 122-18, College and Cormier is the title. He talks about going to Jacksonville and playing a weird comedy warehouse, which was... it's a hell of a story. Here's a quote. They could raffle off a Buick in the middle of the show and you wouldn't even be shocked. Fucking Theo Vaughn. His delivery's real good. He always reminds me of Teeb, but I think it's just because I heard them both, like, at the same time a lot. Both on Punch Drunk and in person, so... but yeah, super funny. He talks about how some dude at that comedy show tried to pitch him on putting a down payment on a sex robot for the guy. Just like, what the fuck kind of story is that? But I thought it was good. And then he talks about Cormier versus Odesmere. I believe he keeps calling him Odesmere at the beginning. Yeah, he keeps calling him Odesmere. At first you think he's a chef. Daniel Cormier, he makes those fancy TV dinners. He's a quote machine the entire time. Then he switches after he reads the name Odesmere, as he calls it, and he switches it to Ozdimmer. So it's closer, but still Ozdimmer is not quite it. And then it just goes off the rails. He compares Cormier to John Henry, the steel-driving man, with his ground and pound. And then the clip you will hear next, which is the clip I teased earlier, the one I was going to have as our intro, is him talking about how Cormier is built and he can make paninis on his wings. Yeah, it's just fucking... It's so fucking weird and funny. He's got a bunch of good quotes in that, and his take on that fight, he admits readily that he's not really like big in the sport. He hasn't followed it very long. In fact, it used to make him feel weird not that long ago. But he loved Ozdemir or he loved Vulcan, and now I feel like I'm saying it wrong because he said it wrong 14 different ways. But he was a big fan of DC and Vulcan, both during the fight and after the fight. And I just thought it was a funny, like, unique take from clearly a casual, but like a dude who knows he's a casual, but still like fucking loves Cormier. Plus he's from Louisiana. As a matter of fact, at one point, Theo talks about slinging what he calls hamps and G-pigs out in some Louisiana parish where he used to sell hamsters and guinea pigs. He calls them hamps and G-pigs. It's a hell of a fucking show. Also, he's coming to San Diego, the La Jolla Comedy Store in February, so hopefully I'll be able to go catch that, because that dude is fucking hilarious. But yeah, that was fantastic. The only other stuff I wanted to shout out, Corolla shows Women's March and betting on the UFC episode, only because Adam was super high on how Ngannou is built, obviously, because that's how I believe the phrase was Ngannou's bicep won't allow him to eat an ice cream cone because it's too goddamn big and his arm won't bend like that. He was real high on the way Ngannou looked. I thought that was hilarious. Here's another quote. There's no way we, meaning Adam Carolla and Ngannou, are from the same god, which I thought was pretty solid. And then Mike August, the infamous Mike August, who is kind of... I'm not the biggest Mike August fan. I'll go ahead and say that. He's kind of not my favorite at all. He books terrible guests and not my favorite. Anyway, he told Adam that Ngannou was a sure thing, which I thought was amazing. Because that sounds like the most fucking Mike August thing ever. Also, yeah, Carolla talks about how he didn't take the bet. And the reason why is because he thought a lot of the Ngannou hype was just because he was a giant dude who looked the part. Because if you guys don't know, Carolla grew up boxing and said, like, yeah, giant dudes like that eventually, like, Carolla wasn't one of those boxers, and for most of the boxers that I know he was a big fan of, they're mostly, like, the scrawny dudes with hella pop, like the Tommy Hearns types, from what I remember, so... Yeah, just it was a solid episode. Nothing to write home about, but pretty good. Junkie Radio 2606 with DC. DC calls in and they just bullshit with DC for a long time. Talk about what he wants to do. George pitches him on some fights George wants to see him in. Just cool interview and a lot of fun. Full Reptile Radio episode 2. Dan Hardy is back with his buddies Owen and Ollie. And Ollie was Dan's strength and conditioning coach. They talk about Stipe's win over Francis, and they also talk about the Danaher JRE episode and how terrifying but educational Danaher was in his delivery. I mentioned that Luke Thomas results show for UFC 220, which was good, where he was drinking Beam and Coke Zero. Beatdown after the bell 220 with TJ DeSantis and Jordan Breen was good. Breen was drunk, and I was real fucking hungover when I listened to this, so I recommend that, but I have 0 notes on it. Promotional malpractice was good. Talk about potential of a Nate fight. Luke's saying it's probably going to be Nate and Connor at some point. That's probably what we're looking at. And Luke also tells a story about accidentally drunk texting Nate one time, tagging immigration. He called it vile and evil, which was like, Jesus, everybody hates Ray Elby this week. Understandably. I fucking made a thread this week about how Ray Elby's a trash person. And I don't even dislike Ray Elby that much. I just hate how he runs Cyborg's Twitter. Because, like, in interactions, he's fine. Anyway, Fights Gone By 65 was good. He recaps the shows. Has some funny quotes about how none of Bellator's old guy fights have turned out good. And how Bellator fucking hates the UK. Let's see. Believe You Me 45 is now on video. Episode 45. I didn't know that show was doing video now. However, the first 30 minutes of the video is off sync with their mouths, which means they have garbage people doing production. That is a fucking 20-second fix in any fucking video editing program. You bastards. Like, I could do that shit I could sync that video up correctly in about 20 minutes. I could download that shit off YouTube and fix it. But they got some lazy-ass production. Fortnite was fine. DC, Chael, Tony Ferguson, Joanna, Paige. Oh, wait, no. Paige didn't call in because she was sick. However, Uriah Faber was the one that told Ariel Paige is sick, which is weird. Is Uriah her manager still, even though she's not at his camp? Seems weird. Anyway. Oh, and one thing I did want to give Ariel some negative shout-outs for is at 2 hours and 20 minutes of his motherfucking podcast this week, he complained about the UFC and why so much filler? Why does the show have to be so long? Why do you have to just have giant filler in your show? Which, first off, Ariel's show is called the MMA Hour. It's 4 hours long. Second off, he has long pauses where he either is arguing with a troll on Twitter or just not speaking and reading fucking messages from his producer. He has like 10, 15 second pauses with no air where I have to look at my phone and be like, damn, is this podcast still running or did it buffer or what? Nope, just Ariel sitting there reading. Drives me goddamn nuts. And he's complaining about like, oh, there's so much filler in these shows. Jesus. Also, Aaron Pico calls in, a couple other people, Jenny Manawa, Brent Primus, and somebody else I'm forgetting. Anyway, it was fine. Nothing to really write home about. I did not get a chance to listen to Submission Radio episode 150. However, I really wanted to. It's got Tai Tuivasa and Tyson Pedro both on it, and I have a feeling it's fucking fire. So that may actually come up on next week's episode. And as well as I do have another podcast that I'm going to be listening to on next week's episode that just dropped like right before I recorded this. I don't remember. It's a new show. Oh, Angela Hill is on Cajun Johnson's podcast, Ragin' MMA, I believe is the name of it. So I'll cover that next week as the new show. But keep an eye out for that. Other things I listened to this week that I wanted to shout out was the Doug Stanhope podcast, episode 158, Funhouse UFC Fight Night, which was from 2016. I don't know. I was just listening to it. They recorded it during the UFC 202 Conor vs. Nate 2 card, and I don't know why. I just thought it was funny. Chad Schenk goes to Vegas and hates it. It's a good show. And then I've also been listening to the Gonzo tapes. If you guys don't know, again, I'm going to Vegas. I've been on a weird Hunter S. Thompson kick for like the last couple weeks. Like I do every couple years, I feel like. Not go to Vegas, but get on a Thompson kick. So I've been reading Fear and Loathing again, #1, which is fucking great. If you guys haven't read that book, it's a light read, but it's super fun. I highly recommend that with some scotch and water. But I've also been listening to the Gonzo tapes, which I forgot was a thing. So they released at one point a lot of his tape recordings, because he would carry a tape recorder around a lot. So there's recordings of him literally hanging out at what I want to say, like Angel Lake or something was the name of it. He's hanging out at a lake at a Hells Angels party in 1965, talking into a tape recorder, drinking beer in his car while a crazy Hells Angels party in the 60s is going on around him. There's clips of him and Allen Ginsberg getting pulled over by the cops outside of Ken Kesey's party that he had with the Hells Angels, where they're asking about arrests that are happening. There's audio, just all this crazy audio. You can hear the audio of him and Oscar Acosta, Dr. Gonzo, the attorney in Fear and Loathing. You can hear the audio of them calling Rolling Stone from the hotel room in Vegas during that trip, asking for more money while Oscar's playing a weird fucking flute in the background, and clips of the Christina Ricci character in that movie. The clips they used in the Gonzo documentary of them going up to taco shops asking where they can find the American Dream. Saw in 71 or whatever they did that. It's so fucking cool. So I'll put a link for that in the description too, because it's really cool, and I feel like no one really knows about it. But it's really interesting to be able to hear Hunter S. Thompson just I don't know, it's kind of a podcast, man. It's pretty rad. So check that out. That's my highest recommendation this week. Oh, bro, highest. Do you get it? Do you get it, bro? Do you get how it's the highest? Anyway, I will wrap this segment here. We will be back, or I will be back, I should say. I will quickly give a recap for Bellator 192, meaning I will talk about the main card and barely, and then I will talk quickly about UFC 220, and after that Cris did record some picks, so we'll play Chris's picks, as well as I will give mine, and for the Brunson vs. Jacare 2 card, Jacare vs. Brunson 2 card this weekend. So we will be right back. This is a clip of Theo Vaughn talking about Daniel Cormier's panini pressed arms. So check it out.
Now, I'm also no expert. I'm no expert at all. And if you want to be like, Theo, you're a fuck muppet, you don't know, you'd probably be right. But I'll say this about Daniel Cormier. That man is built like a damn Schiffer robe with a bad attitude. That man is built like a Schiffer robe, and a fucking grizzly bear had a baby. And he will just, I thought he could smother somebody. I wouldn't be he could put 2 kids to sleep just by putting one under each arm. These children don't want to rest. Fuck giving them a hit of Dimetap or that Tussin. Just pop that fucking, put them up under daddy's chest meat and they'd be out. Dude, I bet he could press a sandwich, dude. He could make a panini right there up against his rib cage with his own wing. And he seemed like that kind of man.
Alright, everybody, I am back. I am going to briefly cover Bellator 192 as well as UFC 220. Of course, Bellator 192, headlined by Gabriel Green versus Cris Padilla, according to Sherdog, because evidently the last post-limb fight is technically the headliner. I mean, it makes as much sense as the actual headliner did, right? Of course, if you guys don't know, this card was headlined by Rory McDonald versus Douglas Lima. Fuck you, Paramount Network. I don't care about you, Paramount Network. Chael versus fucking Rampage was not the main event. So, some things to mention. Conry Gracie, which I know I'm fucking up that pronunciation. Coney Gracie? Conry Gracie? The fucking Hoyce's kid fought on this card and lost via decision, in which neither dude did shit, and it was real sad to watch. It was just a lot of, like, everyone being terrified of the other one's game plan, and Conry getting hit in the face a decent amount. Well, at least he wasn't doing that. Well, he was a little bit, but he wasn't doing that weird fucking, like, step push knee kick to take down that Hoyce was famous for. He only did it like once or twice. Henry Corrales got the decision win over Georgi Karakhanyan. Pretty dominant win for Corrales. Just kind of outworked Karakhanyan. Got the better of a lot of the exchanges and was able to get a decent amount of takedowns. Pretty clearly stole that. Aaron Pico stole a man's soul. Holy Jesus. He fucking killed him to the body about like 10-15 seconds in. He ripped two nasty left hooks to the body. Dude goes down and Aaron Pico backs up and the dude tries to wave Aaron Pico down on the ground. We're like, motherfucker, you're trying to wave a goddamn high-level wrestler down into your guard when you're not that known that much as a jiu-jitsu dude? Like, that's a bad sign. And then, of course, Crutchin stands back up and Aaron Pico fucking kills him with another liver shot and puts him out. Super nasty finish. I recommend going and listening to the audio of that because it's, Bellator makes the cage so much better than the UFC, and that body shot is so nasty sounding. It's haunting. Michael Chandler beat the shit out of Goichi Yamauchi. Yamauchi actually did better on the feet at distance than I thought he was going to. He landed like some weird kicks that I did not expect to land. It seemed like Chandler just kind of didn't give a fuck about him. And just kind of walked through a lot of it. Kept getting the takedown and a lot of Yamauchi being willing to sit on bottom in a guard and throw up arm bars and shit. Chandler won that one easily. Rory McDonald, of course, took on Douglas Lima for the title, which was a good fight. This was happening during the card, which I think, as Cris mentioned earlier, I believe he mentioned it earlier, not later. He mentions in some part of the recording he did that we were watching this at the bar and I had this up on my phone, and Rory was looking real solid the first two rounds, winning a lot of the exchanges. He was eating a lot of those leg kicks, both to the thigh and to the calf, but he was doing well against he was able to close the distance a lot and landing a decent amount, doing well putting Lima up against the cage and kind of working from there. And I don't remember I believe he might have gotten him down briefly in those first two, I think towards the end of the rounds. I'm pretty positive. Again, it's been a very drunk weekend with a lot of fights, so everything's kind of blurring together, especially that night. Jesus. That was a rough night. Shouts out to G6, who was part of the problem. Fucking me and G6 both got kicked out of a bar this weekend. I'll put it like that. Good God, it was a mess. However, so Rory takes those first two rounds. Lima comes out banging on Rory in the third and is really starting to pile up those leg kicks, especially down to the calf. I think it was the end of the third is when Rory's, that giant hematoma starts on Rory's calf, which I've seen a lot of bad hematomas. Like, I grew up skateboarding. I guess I should clarify so y'all don't think I'm fucking rollerblading or anything. But yeah, I grew up skateboarding a ton, and like hematomas on shins or like calves is not that big a deal. Like, I've seen some pretty I've had some nasty ones. I've seen worse ones. My brother has had a couple really bad ones. But holy shit, the thing Rory McDonald had growing out of his leg was terrifying. It looked like a fucking what's that dude who makes Class of Nukem High? Lloyd Kaufman. It looked like a beginning of a goddamn Lloyd Kaufman movie. Just terrifying shit. And that was in the third round after Lima is starting to piece him up a little bit on the feet and really landing those leg kicks. Fourth round starts, Lima hits a nasty leg kick, and Rory goes down, and Lima follows him down into mount. And Lima was in mount in half guard for the majority of that round. Just kind of not landing a ton, but definitely putting work in and winning those rounds pretty handily. Comes down to the fifth round, Lima essentially gets taken down, I want to say in the first probably minute, maybe not even that long into the fight, and then essentially grabs his close guard and hangs out in Rory's guard hangs out in guard with Rory on top for 4 minutes of that round, 4.5 minutes of that round. Doesn't really try to get up. Tries to set up a couple sweeps, a couple arm bars, but just kind of content to stay on bottom, and I'm pretty sure that's why he lost that fight. Kind of upsetting to see. I picked Lima going into that, and I really thought fourth and fifth is when he was going to take over, but just his inability to either get up, his unwillingness to try and get up off bottom in the fifth, I feel like is basically what lost him that fight, which is a little bit of a bummer, but overall still a good fight, and both dudes super fucking tough. They both ate a ton of shots, and good God, Roy's leg looked bad. And then Chael Sonnen versus Rampage. I mean, Chael outboxed Rampage, was hitting flying knees to the body against Rampage, then went on to take Rampage down a lot. Like, I love Rampage. His Twitch channel is great. Everyone go subscribe to his Twitch channel. Don't know how much more I want to see Rampage necessarily fight. Love to see Rampage stream the new UFC game, though. Fucking his old streams of the last one were fantastic, so I recommend checking that out. Yeah, it was a super solid card from them. I've got no complaints at all. So for UFC 220, actually, you know what? I should shout out Big John was fantastic on commentary. If you guys missed it on Bellator 192, highly recommend you go back and check that out. It was really good. Also, Jimmy Smith was great on the desk at UFC 220 as well, so shouts out to both of them, because they're both fucking fantastic. And I heard Jimmy might do a podcast soon, which would be cool as hell, so hopefully that happens. But we will get into UFC 220. Since it's just me, I will quickly run down this card. Yeah, it's not gonna, again, short episode. But holy shit, did Stipe and DC do exactly what I thought Stipe and DC were gonna do. Oh man. Like I've said many times on this show, I lean wrestler heavy always when it comes to style matchups, especially against power punchers, especially against unproven power punchers, especially against unproven power punchers who are known to finish fights only in the first round or early in the second. And that's exactly how these fights went. Stipe was able to get the unanimous decision. I believe there's a couple of 50-44s in there over Francis Ngannou. Ngannou came out super fucking hard in the first round, just winging shit. Caught Stipe a couple times clean. Like, no, I shouldn't say clean, because Stipe leans with shit really well, but really clipped him hard a couple different times. Hit a nasty uppercut when Stipe was coming in, which is the only uppercut I think he landed that entire fight, or one of two maybe. But Ngannou came out hard, but he has that classic Henry Hoof, Anthony Johnson 3 minutes, or I should say 6 minutes of cardio, and then it's pretty much a wrap after that. Or if you can get a takedown, whichever comes first. And Stipe, even towards the end of the first round, he was starting to clip him. The second starts out again pretty wild for like the first minute or so. Apart from like one other wild exchange from Ngannou, it was pretty much just Stipe letting him swing at air and then like either countering hard, long, straight shots or constantly digging for a single leg, making him work and fight it off, and then even if he didn't get it, just making him dump a bunch of energy. One thing we did learn about Ngannou, I know a lot of people are shitting on Ngannou a lot this week, and our artwork is not much better. By the way, if you guys have not noticed our artwork, since I am going to Vegas this weekend, and I was recently, again, like I mentioned, watching a bunch of Hunter S. Thompson stuff. I got real bored at work, and I was like, you know what? I should make some real dumb fucking show art. So that's where that came from. But man, overall, it was a good fight. It was kind of how I expected it to go. But what we did learn about Ngannou is dude has a chin on him. Like, that motherfucker took some shots from Stipe in a real way and was able to hang in there until the fifth, like all the way through the fifth round. It was pretty wild. Like, I know Stipe was not loading up on shit, but man, he got clipped on the feet, especially in that second round. There was a couple shots there where he just got, even towards the end of the first, he got blasted with some shit from Stipe that put a couple different dudes out cold in that division. So that is one positive you can take from Ngannou's performance. It's probably one of the few positives you can take from that performance. Especially after hearing he didn't fucking... all he did was hit pads for that camp. Like, Jesus Christ. Speaking of dudes who did more than hit pads, Volkan Ozdemir took on DC. Volkan is... again, we'll go with the Rumble Johnson 6 minutes cardio Henry Hoof style. Volkan looked fucking good in the first round of this fight, really. Well, I should say first 3 to 3.5 minutes of this round, or of the first round. Volkan came out fucking winging bungalows at DC's head, clipped him a shitload. DC's chin is so insane. People sleep on that just because, like, he got killed by John Jones with a clean head kick in that fight, but good God, can DC take a shot? Like, you thought the Gustafsson knee was bad. He got blasted with some shit by Ozdemir in this fight that put a shitload of light heavyweights asleep in that division, and he walked right through it, was able to just keep the pressure on. Looked like a fucking giant Habib out there, and got the W via TKO from mounted crucifix in the second. Just fucking obliterated him after he gassed. Volkan eventually started slowing down pretty significantly around like 3 or 4 minutes in. And then DC just started putting it on him. Almost finished that choke at the end of the first round. I remember at the bar, a lot of people were like, oh shit, did he finish it? Because it was looking like it was about to be over regardless. But luckily, he got saved by the bell. Came back out. Looked terrifying for about 30 seconds. And then DC hits the takedown again. And just immediately passes. Gets the mount of crucifix. And just pounds him out in like the most Ben Askren Habib style way for a mount of crucifix. Just not even going for the elbow. You always think people would go for the elbow from mounted crucifix. You even heard his corner calling for it, but he just went straight with the fucking wrestler punches, old school style. And good God, man, what a fucking performance. Yeah, as Theo Vaughn would say, fucking John Henry his ass to a victory. I believe that was the reference, right? Oh, John Henry. Isn't that the shit? Or am I making that up? Is that a thing? Oh, God. The scotch might be getting to me. Anyway, we'll keep moving on. Calvin Kattar versus Shane Burgos. Fight of the night, easily. Holy shit, what a fucking war, man. Calvin Kattar came out blasting Shane Burgos with jabs and 1-2s for a lot of that first round. Shane Burgos kept trying to counter with combos, but wasn't putting. It was only throwing like 1 or 2 after the counter, and just wasn't quite catching Kattar. Whereas Kattar was, I'm trying to remember who it was that was saying it. I want to say it was Luke Thomas. No, it was Conor Rebush. That's who it was. Conor Rebush was pointing out how Kattar was using his jab to flash his jab out in front of Shane Burgos just so he could close distance behind it, which you could tell was fucking Burgos up, especially when he started really stepping in in the later rounds behind the jab. He wasn't even throwing the jab necessarily to land it. It was just to kind of to close distance and then really follow up hard, which we'll mention what happened in the third. But so Calvin, I definitely had in that first round. Shane Burgos came back strong in the second round, started throwing mad combos, a lot of like heavy hooks and body shots off of like trying to chase the jab back of Calvin Kattar. And then that was in the second, and in the third round, Calvin Kattar comes out. Essentially, they exchange, I think, like once, maybe twice, and Calvin Kattar clips him fucking hard on the jaw. Shane Burgos kind of stumbles, and Calvin Kattar follows up with a nasty uppercut, and then I think 2 shots on the ground or something like that. Nasty finish. Just crazy impressive performance. I had Burgos going into that, and in the second round I was starting to feel real confident, but Kattar, man, he is so sharp, especially with his his ability to judge distance and just launch that long 2 down the pipe is man, that's a dude to fuck with in that division, especially for how big he is for it. Because I believe they're 45ers, if I remember right. So, should be super interesting to see him going forward. John Vellante versus Francois Barros. I'm not going to talk about this fight. If you want to hear someone talk about this fight, go listen to either Zane Simon do the post-fight show for Bloody Elbow, or go listen to Conor Rebush and Pat Wyman talk about, or mostly just Conor Rebush talk about it on Heavy Hands this week. It was a thing. I was laughing real hard at the bar, but man, it was fun. Rob Font, Thomas Almeida. Font looked good in the first round. It was pretty competitive, but I gave it to Font barely, off of landing a little bit cleaner and winning some grappling exchanges, but it was pretty close. Almeida, I actually towards the end of the first and the beginning of the second, Almeida was looking real good, and then all of a sudden Rob Font goddamn mollywopped him and chased him down and head kicked him, almost like a Darren Elkins Bektik style, off a weird clinch exchange against the cage. And man, super impressive performance from Rob Font. Look out for all the dudes from that camp: Calvin Kattar, Rob Font, and who's the other dude? Was it Bochniak? Yeah, I think it was Bochniak is the other guy on their team. All beasts. Speaking of which, Bochniak got the decision. I actually, the second round could have made, I don't know if it was, I can't remember if it was the first or second. One of those was pretty competitive between Davis and Bochniak. I want to say it was the second. Bochniak was using a lot of solid lateral footwork and some shit Dominic Cruz would appreciate, which he did on the broadcast. But I thought it was a solid win from Bochniak. Good performance. Abdul Razak Al Hassan got the win over Sabah Hamasi after the ref is a giant fuckboy and stood them up in a weird position. It was one of those weird scramble positions where no one really solidified a position, so everyone's scared to, or not scared, but everyone's tentative to advance at all. They're kind of both waiting to see what the other one does for a minute or two, just kind of feeling each other out. And the ref gets super bored, I guess, and stands them up, in which case Abdul Razak Al Hassan just pretty much mollywops Sabah Hamasi and puts him unconscious off an uppercut, if I remember right. Fucking terrible stand-up by that ref. I have not heard nearly enough people talking about it. Clean knockout, but bad stand-up. On the broadcast, Joe and Dom brought it up, but man, I haven't heard nearly enough people complain about it on podcasts this week. Dustin Ortiz got the win over Alejandro Pantoja. Ortiz lost the first round badly via having his back taken for 4.5 minutes of it, but came back to basically grind out a win against a gassed or semi-gassed Pantoja for the next 2 rounds. Second round was clearly Ortiz. Third round was back and forth, but I feel like Ortiz won enough of the scrambles and Pantoja just kind of didn't do enough. So I agree with that decision for sure. Julio Arce took on Dan Ige. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Julio Arce took on the Danimal. I'm probably fucking up Arce. I thought Ige was going to be able to get the takedowns a lot more in that fight, or at least initiate enough scrambles to kind of wear Arce down, because we hadn't seen a lot of his scramble ability in that Contender Series fight. I didn't do enough tape study. Arce is a fucking monster, and he was able to scramble really solidly, and he was so fucking sharp. Definitely a dude to keep an eye on. Enrique Barzola got the decision over Matt Bessette, kind of how I thought it would go. Scrappy Enrique Barzola pushing a pace and constantly swapping between wrestling and striking, and just kind of outworked Bessette. Pretty much how I thought that was going to go. And then Islam Makhachev got the fucking first round knockout 57 seconds in over Gleason Tebow. Gleason did not look good in that fight. He didn't look bad. Well, he looked bad physically, but he didn't look bad like competition-wise necessarily. He did throw a couple lazy kicks, and Islam Makhachev clearly noticed the first time he went for the lazy leg kick. Because the second time he even thought about that combo, Islam Makhachev steps deep with and hits a hard straight left, puts him out cold, and follows up on the ground. Super impressive performance. If you guys don't know, Islam Makhachev, as we mentioned last week, is a dude who was brought in specifically by Habib as a training partner and is supposed to be a fucking beast. And you figure if he's in the gym with Habib every day, like, good God, man. And his striking looks like that. Like, man, that's a motherfucker to keep an eye on. So I am really high on Islam Makhachev. I'm glad I picked him up in fantasy. That was probably that and the Matt Brown against Diego Sanchez and like one other one were like by far my smartest picks all year. So keep an eye on that dude because he's going places for sure. But that was that UFC 220 card. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. We did pretty good on picks overall. We both got the Burgos and Bajos fights wrong. Cris had Davis over Kyle Bochniak, and I had Hamasi over Abdul Razak Al Hassan. But other than that, we aced everything, especially the main two. And then for the Bellator card, of course, I had Lima and Rampage, which did not work out well for me. But Cris did nail the Rory fight, so that was pretty sweet. That was a fun card. We were at the bar. We got real hammered. Shouts out to G6, not helping, and Trevor was there. Actually, a bunch of guests from the show were there, including girlfriend Karen. So that was it was a lot of fun. So I will be right back. You know what? We will be right back. Cris is going to intro his picks off the break, and then I will go through and give mine and comment about how Cris is wrong about 90% of his picks, except for like one or two that I super agree with. So we will talk about that. And when I say that, he normally does better than me on these somehow. So don't bet off my picks is my point. But we will be right back after you hear this clip of Joe Rogan talking about how the world needs more fighters like Rose Namajunas. Let's roll!
Freak you out, but I think the sport needs someone like you.
Yeah.
I really think you're a unique you're a very unique individual, and I think that perspective, can help a lot of people to recognize that there's a broad spectrum of people out there that are doing this, and that your genuine behavior and thought process and how in-depth your thought process is. I think it's very important right now.
I think it is important, especially for women too, you know, because we have a tendency to be pretty catty and bitchy towards each other, and I think that if I can show an example to other women to be more loving to each other, and not just, you know, woman to woman, but to each other, man or woman, I think it's important.
And also the way you shave your head, you're wearing sweatpants, you don't give a fuck.
Right.
You know, I mean, but you're still beautiful. I mean, that's important, and you're also a beautiful person, like your personality. And I think that's so needed right now.
let's go ahead and get into my fight picks. So Pulver and you guys don't have to keep hearing me stumble through my own damn words. So the first fight we got here, this is UFC on Fox 27. Ronaldo Jacare Souza versus Derek Brunson II. Because I believe when they had first fought, it was in Strikeforce. And if I'm correct, it was back in 2013. But then again, I'll go ahead and check. Or 2012, I'll go ahead and check that again. The first fight on the card is Austin, the Golden Boy Arnett, versus Corey Sandhagen. Or as Pulver texted me, Corey Sandbags. So I kind of basically told him this is a coin flip. Austin Arnett is a Tuesday night contender guy. He had a loss there against Brandon Davis, which was unanimous, but Dana's giving him another shot. You got Corey Sandhagen, who's coming out of LFA. His last two victories over a man named Jose Aguayo and Luis Antonio Lobo Gavino. Both of those TKO finishes. So I gotta say, shoot, this is what weight class? This is a featherweight. Man, yeah, this literally is a coin flip for me, and I think I said it's going to be Arnett that I'm going with here, so I'm going with the Golden Boy, Austin Arnett. Next fight up on the card, we got our boy Nike Pierce versus George Sullivan. Nike Pierce, Nico Price, this is his real name, you know, if you haven't gotten the joke yet, guys. Nike Pierce had his last fight against Vicente Luque last October. Evidently, in another Derek Brunson card, when he fought Leon Machida, he lost via Bravo choke submission to Vicente Luque. No shame in that, considering how very good of a grappler and submission artist Luque is. Other than that, Nike Pierce had been previously undefeated with no contest thrown in there as well. George Sullivan, this 36-year-old, fights out of Belmar, New Jersey, out of Pellegrino MMA. This is in the welterweight division. His last fight looks like he's fought in the UFC about 5 times. His last fight, a loss to Alexander Yakovlev at UFC on Fox 18 back in January. Wow, so almost 2 years ago. January 30th, 2016, lost to KO punch. This guy's a 2-year layoff. So I told Pulver my choice is our boy Nike Pierce, and I'm going to stick with that. Next up is probably, in my opinion, one of the top worst nicknames in all of MMA, Vince Pichel, or as he calls himself, or maybe his friends, Vince from Hell Pichel. Mentioned before, I've seen this guy in The Ultimate Fighter in the past. He seemed pretty scrappy on the feet, kind of had some decent talent. I think he had a good jab, if I recall correctly, if I can even really recall at all. Holy shit, he's 35, wow. And you got him fighting Joaquim Silva, also known as Neto BJJ. Interesting. This is a lightweight fight. Silva looks like, excuse me, he's actually currently 10-0. With his last victory being over Reza Madadi. And back in May of last year, he beat him via split decision. Okay. And you got Vince from Hell Pichel. Okay, he's won his last 3 fights in a row. He KO'd Damian Brown back in June of 2017 at Fight Night 110, and he had 2 decision wins over Anthony Jokwani. I'm going to butcher a lot of people's names, and Garrett Whiteley. But as far as this goes, I'm going to go with the Brazilian, who, if your name is Neto BJJ, I'm going to assume that means black belt. I don't know Portuguese. Neto almost sounds like Nero or Negro, so who knows. Probably butchering that. But either way, my official pick is Joaquim Silva. Oh, by the way, this unofficially brought to us by Second Chance Beer. San Diego company just finished drinking this fantastic award-winning toasted porter called Tabula Rasa. Very good stuff. So next we got Justine Poopy Pants Kish. That's actually really mean. I didn't really mean it that way, but she did shit her pants last fight out. So, I mean, unfortunately, people remember her for the one who pooped her pants, even though, fuck, who else was it? There's some heavyweight fighter that shit his pants when he was fighting too. It happens, guys. Sometimes when you gotta go boom boom, you just gotta go boom boom. Anyways, Justine Kish, 29-year-old, fighting at a Black House out of Cramerton, North Carolina. 5'5" strawweight. Her last outing, she had lost via unanimous decision to Felice Little Bulldog Herrig. I think it's Little Bull. I can't remember. At the Chiesa versus Lee fight last summer in June 2017, she is fighting Fire Fist Ji Yeon Kim, the fiery South Korean who looks like, at least on Sherdog, was last. I'm assuming she's obviously a strawweight. She came down from 130 pounds. Her last fight was in the UFC at home versus Kohea in June of last year. She lost to Lucy Pudilova via unanimous decision. Originally, I was thinking, how am I going to go with this one? But I'm going to go with Justine Kish in this, in that she has more UFC experience. And if I recall correctly, she is a wrestler base. And I like her against the Korean Kim. Next fight on the card, we have Randa Marcos versus Juliana Lima. Randa Marcos, we saw her, she fought against Alexa Grasso in a very, very close fight that I almost thought Marcos won. But, I mean, it could have gone either way. That's why it split, I guess, right? So she lost a close split decision last August to Grasso. Very scrappy fight, showed a lot of heart. She's fighting Juliana Jutai Lima, who had a loss in her last fight last July against Tisha Torres. No shame in that. A rear naked choke. This one is, I don't want to say it's not quite a coin flip fight. I'm actually going to go and lean towards Juliana Lima on this based on who she's fought recently. She lost to Joanna Jędrzejczyk back in July of 2014. Then she beat Nana Ansaroff, beat Erica Almeida, lost to Carla Esparza, beat JJ Aldrich. That's an impressive victory. And lost to Tisha Torres, while Randa Marcos owns a victory over Carla Esparza split too, so maybe this could be closer than we think. This might be one of the closest fights on the card, actually. But I'm leaning towards Juliana Lima, and that is going to be my official pick. Moving forward, we have Forza Italia, Mara Romero Barella versus Caitlin Chukagian. I don't know how to say that last name. It looks Armenian, but I'm not sure. Last time we saw Mara Romero Barella, she improved drastically. I believe her fight that we saw in Invicta in July of 2017, she did beat Milana Dudeva, but it was a split decision. And after that, she moved to American Top Team down in South Florida and absolutely handled Kalindra Faria on the Ferguson versus Lee card last October. And that was a very impressive victory. Beat her 2 minutes, 54 seconds into the very first round. Caitlin Chukagian trains out of Mark Henry's gym in New Jersey with the likes of Edson Barboza, Frankie Edgar, Marlon Moraes. Her last win was a split decision victory over Irene Aldana, who looked very good as a boxer. What was it, a week or two ago? I think it was last week already. Maybe it's 2 weeks ago. I've already lost count. Either way, this is a pretty close fight to pick, but I'm on the Italian hype train, and I'm going to go with Barella in this fight. She is my official pick for that scrap. Next up, we got another interesting fight. We got Mirsad Bektic, the Ukrainian, versus Godofredo Pepe, or Castro, but Pepe, that's what we call him. Mirsad Bektic, if you last saw him fight, he was pretty much dominating this fight. I'd say 2.5 out of the 3 rounds against a very scrappy Darren the Damage Elkins. Elkins had that insane comeback where he knocked out Bektic against the cage. I believe it's with his knee, and then he finished him with a hook. Godofredo Pepe, last time we saw him, lost to the hyped prospect Shane Burgos when he was on his undefeated streak in July of last year, the unanimous decision. This is definitely another tough fight to call, but I'm going to go with Mirsad Bektic. I know he hasn't fought in almost a year. His last fight was in March 2017, but I like that he trains out of American Top Team. I like his ability to... I like the top control he had against a wrestler like Elkins. I remember he had a lot of ground and pound in that fight, and if you could do that to a wrestler like Elkins, I really think he's going to do very well against someone like Godofredo Pepe, who I know is good at jiu-jitsu and he has a good I think he's good off his back, if I remember. But then again, I haven't watched Pepe as much as I should. You know, like we mentioned before, I should be doing more tape study. But then again, this is super last minute right now of me recording, so I apologize for that. But yes, Mirsad Bektic is my official pick for this fight. Moving on, I'm going to go ahead and speed it up real quick. We got Bobby Green and Eric Koch. Eric Koch, last time we saw him, the Phoenix, the lightweight fighter. He lost a unanimous decision to Clay Guida. I believe I saw Koch on his back against the cage, against the fence, pretty much the whole entire fight. Koch, to me, kind of seemed like he's like a wrestler-brawler hybrid. Guida, knowing has always had good top control, was able to just impose his will on him. Bobby Green, however, had an amazing fight against Lando Vannata that resulted in a draw. Before that, look at these names Bobby Green had fought. He had fought Rashid Magomedov, Dustin Poirier, Edson Barboza, and then he had a win over Josh Thompson. So he avoided losing a fourth fight in a row and drew against Lando Vannata. No shame in that. My pick for this fight is Bobby Green. I think he's going to get it done on the feet against someone like Eric Koch. Moving on, we have Drew Dober versus President Dwayne Elizondo Hector Mountain Dew Camacho. Just kidding. Frank Camacho is the next guy up. Drew Dober, last time we saw this guy, he beat Joshua Berkman, who I remember has mentioned multiple times, this is my retirement fight. It wasn't again. If I recall correctly, he didn't put his gloves down on the canvas. He actually knocked out Joshua Berkman pretty bad. Don't really remember it being a close fight other than that. I mean, well, if you think about it, Berkman probably should have retired if he get knocked the fuck out, but you know, sometimes it's just the way she goes. Frank Camacho had a the split decision victory over Damian Brown last November. He showed really good toughness on the feet. This guy reminds us a lot of Robbie Lawler. And yeah, man, this is a really these cards, man, these fights are close to pick. But as I had emailed Pulver earlier, I'm going with my boy President Camacho, man. This guy, I just love his Robbie Lawler-like approach. This dude does not mind taking damage. Granted, that's not the best approach to fighting, but sometimes it gets you through those fights. Let's just ask, Justin Gaethje and Lawler. Tough sons of bitches. Next, we got my boy Gregor the Gift Gillespie versus Jordan All Day Rinaldi. I'm just going to tell you right now, no disrespect to Jordan Rinaldi, but I'm going with my boy Gregor Gillespie. This dude is ever the bit impressive as a lightweight. I think he fought in featherweight previously. Holy shit, yeah, this guy's undefeated right now, 10-0. I am all on this hype train. Choo-choo, motherfuckers. I'm going with Gregor Gillespie. After that, the co-main event, that's what brings us to Dennis Bermudez and Andre Touchy-Feely. Andre Touchy-Feely, who lost his 2 front teeth. I don't know which fight it was, but I remember I saw this funny video. He posted to Instagram. There's this company, I think it was Vitamix or some sort of vitamin company, that sent him a scale. They paid him to do a couple promotions. And basically he said, oh, you didn't pay me for the other time you told me you'd pay me, so fuck your product. And it showed him smashing this scale with the baseball bat. Pretty hilarious by Andre Feely. His last win came against Artem, the Russian Hammer, or as I like to call him, the T-Rex Lobov, last October, which was a unanimous victory. He basically wrestle-fucked him the whole time, which, why not? Because, Lobov, credit to him, has got some power in them hands, as short as they are. And before that, he had a loss to Calvin Kattar. No shame in that. Dennis the Menace Bermudez, last time we saw him, he lost a split, very close decision to Darren Elkins in July of last year. Before that, he got knocked the fuck out by Korean Zombie when he returned from serving in the military. This, to me, when I see this, it's almost like a wrestling battle, but Dennis Bermudez has that power. I know Feely's got I'm assuming has a longer reach because he's 5'10", Bermudez is 5'6". He's going to have the longer reach advantage. He's probably going to stick around and jab, I think, while Bermudez kind of just tries to close the distance. Close the distance more or less. He's going to try to get that single leg, I think, and probably just switch a lot of feints in there. But I like Andre Feely in this. I think he's going to stay close, keep his jabs, keep his distance, not really try to change levels too much, and I think he's going to be able to kind of negate some of those takedown attempts from Bermudez, and I think it's going to probably go down to a decision. And then finally, we have the main event of the evening, a fantastic rematch with Ronaldo Jacare Souza versus Derek Brunson. Holy shit, this is a great fight. I hope I get to watch it on Saturday. I believe I have the day off, so I am definitely going to take full advantage of that. Let me look real quick. Last time I saw this, where the fuck did they fight? I said 2013, then I said 2012. Here it is, Strikeforce, Rousey versus Kaufman. Wow, what an interesting fucking headliner. If you didn't see them when they were in Strikeforce, he beat Derek Brunson via fucking KO. Holy shit, 41 seconds into the first round. Damn, that's crazy. This time around, I don't think it's going to go that way, because if you saw Derek Brunson last, he knocked Lyoto Machida the fuck out, man. So, this is interesting. I know Brunson's, I believe, if I recall, had a wrestling background in North Carolina when he was in high school. I know he said he cheerleaded in high school. Which you think, oh, why the fuck would he do that? He said it was to get chicks, and it was also to just stay nimble and athletic. Good on him, man. That's not a bad game plan if you're in high school. But yeah, Lyoto Machida basically looked lost out there in his last fight against him. It was just too much power, too much volume for him. Lyoto shouldn't have been exchanging blows. Ronaldo, or I should just say Jacare. Why the fuck am I just calling him by his first name? Jacare has shown he could stand and bang with some of the best of the guys out there. He submitted Tim Boach. He knocked Vitor Belfort out pretty good. He lost a split decision to Yoel Romero a couple years ago, which some argue Jacare could have gone his way. But his last fight, he got TKO finished, head kick and punches to Robert Whittaker, who is still, in my opinion, the undisputed champ right now, but unfortunately nursing an injury. Fuck you, UFC and Endeavor, for throwing out interim title. But good on you, Yoel Romero, for getting your crack at gold again. He's such a cool guy. Yeah, this is the closest fight on the card, I think, bar none. Shit, man, yeah. You know what? I'm going to go with Derek Brunson. I think his counter wrestling ability, he's going to be able to kind of keep the distance away from Jacare. Jacare, I believe, has contemplated retirement recently. He's 38. He scored in Sherdog. Brunson's got that gnarly knockout power. I think he's going to be able to catch him clean. He's going to clip him and get the finish late. This kid's probably going to go, honestly, to the third or fourth round. It's going to be a very, very competitive fight. So, yeah, Derek Brunson's my official pick. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for me. I'm going to go ahead and get your guys' hairs. Kept this under 30 minutes. Going to make it easy for Pulver. Anyways, y'all keep it real. You have a good time watching the fights. And listen to Pulver do his thing. All right, see ya.
All right, well, that was Chris's picks. And, goddamn, actually, that dude's way better at reading records than I am. So, I may have to make him do that from now on instead of me, because that went way smoother than when I do it. Probably because I am always drunk by this time in the show. Shouts out to this Scotch and water I'm drinking, which is, I'm not going to say it's my third. I mean, it probably is, but I'm not going to say that. So I'll give my picks quickly. I'm not even going to run down who they fought previously or anything, because Cris did a great job of that. I'm literally just going to go through and say who I'm leaning towards. I actually don't disagree with Cris on a lot of these picks. That's interesting that Austin Arnett is coming off the loss to Brandon Davis, who we just saw fight on that 220 card last weekend. I have not seen any, so I should say I've done no tape study at all for this card, because like I said, I'm going out of town. I'm probably not even going to be able to watch this card live, which will be the first card I haven't watched live in, a year or two maybe. So after saying that and having watched no tape, I've at least seen Austin Arnett compete, so I'm going to go that way, but zero confidence, and based off of very little anything. Nico Price, or as we like to call him, our boy Nike Pierce, out of ATT Cape Coral, fighting George Sullivan. So I'm pretty high on Nike Pierce. He did get caught by Vicente Luque, but Vicente Luque is a motherfucker. Yeah, coming off of a loss to Yakovlev. 10 means, but that's a win. This is an interesting fight. I am probably going to lean. You know what? I'll go our boy Nike Pierce. He is our boy after all. Again, put very, very little weight into my picks for this week because I have done almost no research at all. Other than like what I vaguely remember about these dudes. This is one of the few cards I haven't done a tape study on. Vince Pichel versus Joaquim Silva. So this is a tough matchup. I never would know what to think of fights against Reza Madadi. Because they're always close. And Reza Madadi always looks the same. But he kind of drags a lot of people into his fight. Where it's just kind of like, almost like Artem. Reza Madadi's kind of like Artem. He's like a better Artem. He's like if Artem was well-rounded. Or, well, at least less round, but more well-rounded. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, I'm actually probably leaning from Pichel on this. I know he's had a long time off, but he looked really good in that Damian Brown fight. And Damian Brown is a decent name to be coming off a win against. Compared to like a Reza Madadi like split decision. I think that'll be a fun fight either way, and I could see it going either way, but I'm kind of high off Vince Pichel after that win, so I will lean that direction. Justine Boom Boom Kish, as Cris likes to call her, evidently, is taking on Ji Yeon Kim. Ji Yeon Kim, I'm a big racist. I always mix her up with Chemi John. But Ji Yeon Kim looked really good against Lucy Pudilova from what I remember. I think I saw her fighting Road back in the day. But Road cards are always on in the middle of the night, and I'm always trashed by then, so a lot of the fighters blend together. Not because I'm a racist and they all look the same, but because I'm drunk and I can't fucking have... I have very poor memory of most Road cards. It's similar to Ryzen. Like, anything after the first hour or two of Ryzen, I have a vague memory of. Like, at one point, I think Joe Warren was making child molestation accusations, but I probably made that up. That's probably not real. That's probably just a figment of my drunken imagination on that card. Or Joe Warren is hilarious and he accidentally thought Mirko Krokop's daughter was his girlfriend. One of the two. Anyway, yeah, I'm going Justine Kish. I actually really like Justine Kish in this fight. While I do think it's pretty well balanced matchmaking wise, I'm pretty high on Justine Kish, especially coming off the fight. I believe she's coming off the Felice Herrig fight, right? If I check that was who that was. Yeah, and Felice Herrig's been on a crazy run since then. She's been on a crazy run, including that fight, and she was competitive for a lot of it, and she had to overcome adversities in that fight, and still was scrappy as fuck in it. So I like Justine Kish, and Ji Yeon Kim, from what I remember, actually has pretty solid wrestling. Wait, I think I do remember Ji Yeon Kim now that I'm thinking about this. I think I remember watching tape study from her last fight. If I remember right, she has pretty decent wrestling for her size, but she is small for that weight class, if I remember right. So, I'm going to lean Justine Kish, but I'm not confident at all. Like, at all. I think that fight and this next fight are probably, as Cris said, two of the most well-matched fights on this card. Randa Marcos, the Quiet Storm, which for sure I think I remember that character from Metal Gear Solid 5. Pretty sure. She's coming off the loss of Alexa Grasso, went over Carlos Barza, Juliana Lima, lost Tisha Torres, went over JJ. Man, this is a tough fight to pick. I have so many mixed feelings about Randa Marcos. Like, I'm so high on Randa Marcos and so down on Randa Marcos at the same time. She's one of those fighters. I mean, she's been splitting wins and losses for holy shit. She's been splitting wins and losses since 2014. So you know what? Just off of odds alone, I'm going to go that she wins this fight. I'm going to go Randa Marcos because since 2014, she's had a loss and then a win and then 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 a loss. So I'm going to go she gets a win. Plus, I think she might be able to out-wrestle Juliana Lima and stay out of trouble. And she looked a little bit better on the feet in her last fight, especially going decision Alexa Grasso. You got to be at least okay on the feet. So I am going to go Marcos, but ooh, that one makes me nervous. This next one does not make me nervous. I am so fucking high on Maria Morero. Oh, I've got such a fucking... Lorisenko has ruined this poor girl's name for me because of how bad she fucks it up on her show, and in Invicta, she over enunciates every part of it. So it constantly fucks me up. Mara Romero Barella. Oh man, I was gonna say I should just go with her nickname, but I feel like I'm gonna fuck that up. Kunoichi? It's Kunoichi. Okay, Kunoichi. I'm going with her. She's a motherfucker. In all the most respect. The way she ran through Clinder Faria, in that last fight is super impressive. While Caitlin Chukagian, I believe it's Chukagian, I'm not positive. So my rule is always do whatever Lorisenko and John Anik do, because they do and TJ Santos, they do the most tape study on saying it the way the fighter says it. So that's always my go-to. I believe it's Chukagian. I believe Anik says Chukagian. I believe TJ says Chukagian. Not positive. However, she is coming off the win over Irene Aldana and loss to Liz Carmouche, both by split decision. Win over Laura Murphy. I mean, those are some big wins. This is going to be a crazy fight. Oh, man, and she's at Enzo Gracie's team. I didn't know that. Shit. That makes this interesting. Shit. I'm going to go Barella, because she's out of ATT. Assuming she's still out of ATT. If she's no longer out of ATT and I didn't hear about that, then fucking don't listen to this pick. But just because Dean and the girls that she has to work with down at that team are so fucking on top of shit, I am 100% going that way. I'm going Mirsad Bektic over Godofredo Pepe. Godofredo Pepe is a dude he's a gift, as Eugene S. Robinson would say. He's a guy I can't trust. While he has had big wins, and while his losses are to dudes with big names, aside from Felipe Aranches, I just have zero faith in Godofredo Pepe to not just pull guard and sit on the bottom for 90% of the fight. Dude is super happy to sit on bottom, which is fine, but against a dude like Mirsad Bektic, who was running shop on Darren Elkins for, like Cris said, 2.5 rounds until he got caught with a crazy, flurry to head kick in a clinch exchange. Oh god, Darren Elkins is a beast, as seen in his most recent fight. So I'm going Mirsad Bektic heavily in this round. I like him probably to finish, but safe money is probably on a decision. I think it'll be a fun fight either way, though. This Pepe's going to come to scrap for the first bit of it. Where did my drink go? Oh, there's my drink. I've been trying not to clink the glass because I know if it bugs Doug Stanhope and he's a giant drunk, it's gotta bug everybody. So I'm trying not to clink it too much. Lando Veneta, Bobby Green is coming off the draw against, which was fucking wild. Eric Koch is coming off the loss to Clay Guida, which was a good looking Clay Guida. Pause. And then a win over Shane Campbell. I know he's had time off. Also, shouts out to Eric Koch's podcast, Worst Fire Team Ever, which he does with Eric Griffin from Workaholics and Bobby Lee's brother and like a couple other people. It's fucking great. Check that out. But yeah, Eric Koch. You know why I'm gonna go Eric Koch? Eric Koch is at a Rufus Sport. I'm real high on Rufus Sport right now. I'm not high. I'm high on certain people in Rufus Sport. Just because there's a lot of bodies in there, and a lot of those dudes are starting to game plan pretty fucking well. I mean, you even see like the Paul Felders, and like having dudes like that in the room has got to help. Plus, I like Eric Koch. I think his fucking podcast is great. So, and I don't know if you guys have noticed yet, I'm a fucking homer for whoever has a podcast. Name the last time I picked against somebody with a podcast. I probably did. I don't know. When was the last time Brendan Schaub fought? No, I think I picked Brendan Schaub in his last fight. Oh god, that's embarrassing. Okay, I'll go. So, on the main card on Fox, which hopefully I'll be watching in some fucking casino or something. We got Frank Camacho versus Drew Dober. This is gonna be a scrappy ass fight. I'm pretty fucking hyped for this. Conor Rebush had a good breakdown of it because he's hyped for it as well. Both these guys are known for a lot of pressure and known to throw, and especially Camacho in his last fight. And with Jangling, he fucking went out there and just banged the entire time. I'm gonna go Camacho in this fight, probably by late TKO, just because I always wonder about Drew Dober's gas tank. I think it's just from when he had trouble cutting weight back in the day. If I remember right, he did. If I'm mixing that up, I apologize. It's probably Kevin Gastelum's fault because they remind me of each other. Also, does that make me racist? Is Drew Dober Mexican? I don't know if he is. I don't think he is he? That probably makes me more racist, huh? Damn it, I'm so bad at this. I'm going Camacho. I don't know. Because I like Camacho's style. And if Drew Dober can throw a lot of long, sharp punches and stay on the outside and not get caught by the Robbie Lawler-esque flurry hooks of Camacho, then I think Dober definitely has a chance to win this fight. Also, if Dober works a wrestling game, he has a real good chance to win this fight. I just wonder Dober's commitment to the wrestling game when he starts getting clipped hard with flurries. So, we'll see. Up next, we have Gregor Gillespie coming off some fucking scary wins against Jordan Rinaldi. Was coming off is Jordan Rinaldi the dude who hit? I think he's the dude who hit the Von Flue, right? I believe so. I got Gregor Gillespie in this. I am high on Gregor Gillespie, just like Cris is. Not much to say about it other than that. Other than, dude seems legit, and I'm excited to see what's next for him. I think Jordan Rinaldi is going to be a real test for where his overall skill level is at. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of game plan he implements, but definitely in that way. Dennis Bermudez, Andre Fili. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Andre Fili's one of those dudes who another guy I can't trust. Eugene S. Robinson style gicked. A win over Artem Lobov means nothing to me, but losses to Calvin Kattar and Yair Rodriguez also don't mean much to me. That's understandable, especially after their last two performances. Totally understandable. Well, not Yair's last one, but overall body of work. Godofredo Pepe is the kind of stuff that makes me a little nervous. He does have the win over Mowgli, Gabriel Benitez, and Hakran Diaz. The thing I worry about is Andre Fili. I feel like can be wrestle fucked. And Dennis Bermudez is a dude who, if he decides to do that, will do that. And he hasn't really had a chance to in a while. I believe the last time was Honey Jason, and that was like a while back. And even then, he's willing to exchange. I don't have any faith in Fili to show up consistently. I like Fili. I think his band is hilarious. welcome to his party. But I have a feeling this one is actually going to be Bermudez's party. So, shots fired. All right, and we got Jacare versus Brunson. Excuse me, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I got Jacare in my fantasy league, and I got Jacare in my picks. Again, Brunson is another gift, as Eugene S. Robinson would say. If you guys don't know about Eugene S. Robinson, check out patreon.com/thestomper, or look at his YouTube page, Eugene S. Robinson Show Stomper, I believe is what it's called. But yeah, I got no faith in Brunson to not sprint forward into a takedown or a giant overhand. Zero faith. Same reason I picked, to be fair, same reason I picked Lyoto over Brunson, but also same reason I picked Whitaker over Brunson. Brunson sprints forwards when he gets like panicky about, like, I feel like at a certain level of competition, he gets in his head and he does the opposite of what Uriah Hall does. Uriah Hall gets real tentative and overthinks everything. Derek Brunson does the exact opposite, where he's like, fuck this, and he just Leroy Jenkins his way into every fight, where he's just like, I'm just gonna sprint forward with my face and try and wing a bunch of overhands, and let's see how this goes. I don't. If he is able to just stay on the outside and shut down Jacare's takedowns, which he has the counter wrestling to do, and he has the sharp long strikes to do, I think he can probably win that fight. 5 rounds is a long time to do that against Jacare. But I like Jacare to just either... I just think at a certain point, either Derek Brunson gets bored and sprints forward, or Derek Brunson panics because he gets clipped and sprints forward. I think either way, shit is going to end up bad for him. Like, I see it probably ending up in a takedown and ground and pound to submission, but I don't know. Derek Brunson could sprint into a right hand also. But I'm going to go Jacare heavily in this one. So that is my picks. Cris gave his earlier. Again, apologies for this being a weird episode. Normally we are in studio. We will be back in studio next week, since I will not be out of town and he will not have... we'll be able to record on our regular recording night. So... if you guys don't know, you can hit us up on Twitter, TSOVPod. Send us an email, sovpod@gmail.com. You can hit us up on the website, sovpod.com or thesoundofviolence.com. Subscribe on iTunes. Give us a like and a subscribe on, what's that shit? YouTube. On whatever podcast thing you use. We appreciate it. Because it does help get us a couple extra listeners or whatever, theoretically. If y'all are into the... I should shout out Scoresby, the terrible scotch I'm drinking. I'm not drinking good scotch. I know y'all thinking like, oh, he's probably drinking classy scotch. No, I'm drinking plastic bottle scotch. It's one of those weeks, y'all. But I like Scoresby. With water, it's drinkable. But also shouts out to our sponsor for as long as he lasts in that game. Kangaroos MMA out in Sydney. Judo Bill is the man. And I can't wait to do some other dumb commentary after, goddamn, that fucking Supreme Champion commentary. So after that, I will go ahead and wrap it there. But like we said, hit us up if you have any podcast recommendations, or if you think we're fucking up. And till next time, everybody, I'm gonna be in Vegas, so good. Hopefully I'll be back next week. Hopefully I won't end up on a weird bender where I rent a white Cadillac and drive around the desert looking for the American dream. It's possible. You know what? On that note, Hunter, take us out. Thompson, that is. Cheers.
Ooh, yeah.
drive your stake through a darkened heart in a red Mercedes Benz. The blackness hides a speeding tramp. The savage breast pretends. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Mango bodies tell no tale. Mango bodies tell no tale. Mango bodies tell no tale. And tell no lies. Tell no lies. But never mind the lies, my love. Because
They never really happened anyway.
they never really happened anyway. They never really happened anyway. But days go by, and love goes by, and sooner or later, people must cry. I had a galaxy, the dark